Did you know that Massachusetts once stretched all the way to Canada? Or that there's an island off its coast that's permanently closed because it's still full of unexploded bombs? How about the fact that Boston literally drowned 4 towns just to quench its thirst? Well, the state may be famous for clam chowder, the Red Sox, and colonial history, but there are secrets hiding way beyond Freedom Trail tours in Fenway Park. So get ready, because we're about to hit you with 50 of the wildest facts about Massachusetts that you probably never knew. Fact 50, the name that came from a hill. Every time you say Massachusetts, you're speaking ancient geography. The state's name comes from the language of the Massachusetts tribe, meaning at the Great Hill, a nod to the Blue Hills south of Boston. These modest peaks rise only a few hundred feet, but for the Algonquin peoples, they were a defining landmark visible for miles. Long before the Pilgrims or the Revolution, that Great Hill marked home. So the next time you hear Massachusetts, remember, it's not just a name. It's a 400-year-old echo of the land itself. Fact 49, where plants eat bugs. Think New England means pine trees and maples? Think again. South of Boston, you'll find Ponkapog Bog, where the ground shakes under your feet, and the plants are carnivorous. Pitcher plants and sundews grow on floating mats of moss, waiting to trap unlucky insects in their digestive pools. It's one of the few bogs of its kind in New England. Acidic, silent, and otherworldly. A narrow boardwalk winds through the swamp, where each step feels like a crossing into a world where the plants are the predators. Welcome to nature's quiet revenge. Fact 48, when Massachusetts reached Canada. Once upon a time, Massachusetts was enormous, stretching all the way to the Canadian border. From the 1650s until 1820, Maine wasn't its own state at all, but the District of Maine, governed directly from Boston. For nearly 2 centuries, Mainers were technically Bay Staters, making Massachusetts roughly twice its current size. It took 167 years and a lot of frustration over distance and politics before Maine finally broke away. So if you lived in Portland back then, congratulations, you were a Massachusetts resident whether you liked it or not. Fact 47, America's oldest weather station. Perched atop Great Blue Hill in Milton, Blue Hill Observatory has tracked weather continuously since 1885, giving it the longest unbroken climate record in the United States. Observers have maintained daily measurements for over 138 years straight, documenting everything from chill spring days to catastrophic hurricanes. This humble stone building has become a living archive where modern scientists can compare current conditions directly to 19th century data. The observatory recorded one of the most extreme weather events in American history. Spoiler alert, 186-mile-per-hour winds, and was both a victim and a witness to some of New England's strongest storms. It is a true monument to meteorological tenacity, having watched over Boston's weather for nearly 150 years. Fact 46, the Bridgewater Triangle. Southeastern Massachusetts has a reputation, and not the kind you brag about. Locals call it the Bridgewater Triangle. 200 square miles of fog, swamps, and folklore where strange lights, phantom animals, and UFOs have been reported for decades. Centered around the Hockomock Swamp, whose name literally means place where spirits dwell, this eerie land has inspired documentaries and paranormal pilgrimages. Whether it's science, superstition, or just swamp gas, one thing's for sure, after dark, even skeptics start to feel the chill. Fact 45, an island that disappeared. Off Cape Cod once stood Billingsgate Island, a peaceful community of 30 homes, a schoolhouse, and a lighthouse. Then, the Atlantic decided it wanted it back. One storm at a time, the shoreline eroded, forcing residents to literally float their houses across the bay to safety. By 1942, the island was gone, swallowed completely by the sea. Today, at the lowest tides, a ghostly sandbar appears, scattered with bricks from the drowned village they once called home. Locals call it Cape Cod's Atlantis. It's a haunting reminder that even in New England, the ocean always wins. Fact 44, the desert that shouldn't exist. Desert and Massachusetts don't belong in the same sentence, but try telling that to the Marlborough Desert. This 615-acre stretch of parched, sandy soil sits in the middle of pine country, looking like it was teleported from Arizona. Formed by ancient glaciers and stripped bare by colonial farming, the land was too poor for crops and too dry for forests. What's left is a surreal environment of pitch pines, dunes, and silence. the only true desert ecosystem in New England. Walking here feels wrong in the best way possible. Sand crunches under your feet, and for a moment, you forget you're still in Massachusetts. Fact 43, record-shattering hurricane winds. In 1938, Massachusetts was hit with a storm so violent that instruments could barely record it. During the Great New England Hurricane, Blue Hill Observatory measured wind gusts of 186 miles per hour. Still, the strongest ever recorded in North America. Trees snapped like matchsticks, roofs flew like paper, and in some towns, straw was driven clean through wooden poles by the sheer force of the wind. Observers at Blue Hill clung to the building to stay upright as their anemometer nearly exploded. Almost a century later, that record still stands. Fact 42, the towns that were erased for water. When Boston ran out of water, it made an impossible choice. It erased 4 entire towns. In the 1930s, the state flooded the Swift River Valley to create Quabbin Reservoir, submerging Dana, Enfield, Greenwich, and Prescott under 400 billion gallons of water. Families were forced to leave, homes demolished or drowned, and roads disappeared beneath the rising lake. Today, it's one of the largest man-made reservoirs in the world, a pristine blue surface hiding ghost towns below. On calm days, you can still see fragments of foundations. It's both a marvel of engineering and a graveyard for lost communities. Fact 41, the hills that built Boston. Boston's skyline was shaped by ice, literally. The city sits on one of the densest drumlin fields in North America. Hundreds of smooth, whale-shaped hills sculpted by glaciers thousands of years ago. Bunker Hill, Breed's Hill, Dorchester Heights. Every historic rise where the Revolution was fought is actually a glacial remnant. Even the Boston Harbor Islands are just drowned drumlins, their tops poking through the sea. From above, eastern Massachusetts looks like a basket of eggs, a frozen ripple of ancient ice that still defines the landscape today. Fact 40, the island that kept disappearing. Off Martha's Vineyard sits Chappaquiddick, an island that couldn't make up its mind. For decades, a narrow strip of sand connected it to the main island, until one stormy night in 2007 changed everything. The Atlantic tore through the barrier, turning Chappaquiddick into a true island overnight. Locals suddenly needed ferries to visit what had once been a short drive away. The name Chappaquiddick literally means separated island in Algonquin, an ancient prophecy fulfilled. It's not the first time this happened either. Storms in 1958 and 1978 split it before. On Cape Cod, the ocean is always rewriting the map. Fact 39, Roxbury Puddingstone. Taste like rock. Massachusetts State Rock sounds like dessert, and it looks like one too. Meet Roxbury Puddingstone, a mashup of colorful pebbles cemented together by sandstone, resembling a slice of geological fruitcake. Early Bostonians built churches and foundations with it, and it's so iconic that in 1983 it became the official state rock. You'll spot it everywhere around Boston, pink, gray, and studded with pebbles like nature tried baking. It's billions of years old, totally inedible and weirdly beautiful. Basically, the only pudding in the world that could break your teeth. Fact 38, Cranberry capital of the North. While Wisconsin takes first place, Massachusetts ranks as America's #2 cranberry producer, supplying roughly 28% of the national crop from over 14,000 acres of bogs. Southeastern Massachusetts is dotted with flat cranberry bogs that transform into crimson carpets each fall when flooded for harvest. The cranberry even earned official state berry status, appropriate since the industry started here in the 1810s. That Thanksgiving cranberry sauce on your table? Good chance it grew in sandy Cape Cod bogs. The harvest attracts tourists who snap pictures of workers wading through red berry-filled bogs like they're swimming in edible rubies. Fact 37, 1,519 miles of coastline. Here's a number that doesn't add up. Tiny Massachusetts has roughly 1,500 miles of coastline, nearly double California's if you count every twist, cove, and island. That maze of inlets and bays is how it earned the nickname, the Bay State. Cape Cod alone looks like a giant arm flexing into the Atlantic, and the islands and harbor cliffs stretch the shoreline way farther than what maps suggest. The result? A coastline so broken and beautiful it squeezed New Hampshire into just 18 miles of oceanfront. Fact 36, the marsh that saves cities. North of Boston sprawls the Great Marsh, 20,000 acres of tidal creeks, grasses, and mudflats that form New England's biggest continuous salt marsh. And it's more than scenery, it's a living defense system. The The marsh absorbs storm surges, filters water, and provides a rest stop for millions of migratory birds following ancient flight paths. From above, it looks endless, green veins pulsing with tide water, stretching all the way to New Hampshire. It's proof that nature can out-engineer us all. Fact 35, the deadly 1953 tornado. When you think tornadoes, Massachusetts probably doesn't come to mind. But let us tell you about the 1953 Worcester tornado. This F4 beast carved a 48-mile path that lasted 78 minutes, injuring 1,288 people and sadly taking the lives of 94 people, making it New England's deadliest tornado ever. On June 9, 1953, the twister leveled entire Worcester neighborhoods, tossing cars and ripping church steeples from foundations. It ranks among U.S. history's most destructive single tornadoes. New England typically sees only weak tornadoes. Terrain and weather don't usually support sustained rotation. But 1953 proved that under the right or wrong conditions, even northern states can experience tornado alley violence. Fact 34, the pond that's deeper than the harbor. Walden Pond in Concord gets called a pond, but it's really a deep glacial lake plunging 102 feet down, twice as deep as sections of Boston Harbor. Surprisingly deep for its small 64-acre surface. This glacial kettle lake was carved by a melting Ice Age iceberg, which explains its perfect clarity and steep blue walls. Henry David Thoreau made it famous with his cabin and his reflections on solitude, but even he was shocked by its depth when he took measurements himself. For all its calm beauty, Walden is less of a pond and more of an ancient crater filled with mystery, a mirror that's been reflecting Massachusetts for 10,000 years. Fact 33, extreme temperature swings. Massachusetts experiences a humid continental climate, which means it has hot, sticky summers and cold, snowy winters. However, its weather operates on mood swings, serious ones. The state record high hit 107 degrees Fahrenheit on August 2, 1975, recorded simultaneously in coastal New Bedford and inland Chester. Somehow, both cooked identically that day. The record low plummeted to negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit, recorded in 1904, 1943, and 1981 in multiple towns. That's a 142-degree swing between extremes. From blizzards burying the state in winter to outrageous summer heat waves, Massachusetts experiences everything. You can genuinely fry eggs and freeze water in the same spot depending on what month you visit. Fact 32, the quake that rocked colonial America. On November 18, 1755, way before seismographs existed, Massachusetts was shaken awake by a massive earthquake. The epicenter sat just off Cape Ann, but tremors were felt from Nova Scotia to the Carolinas. In Boston, chimneys crumbled, church steeples twisted, and terrified colonists thought the world was ending. It struck just 17 days after Lisbon's catastrophic quake, feeding fears of divine wrath. Scientists estimate it at around magnitude 6.0, the strongest in New England history. For a region known for calm bedrock, the 1755 quake proved that even the oldest land can wake up angry. Fact 31, No Man's Land, the island of unexploded bombs. Off Martha's Vineyard, you'll find No Man's Land Island. But here's the kicker, you're absolutely forbidden from visiting it. But why? Part of the traditional lands and waters of the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhead, an isolated 628-acre island served as a U.S. Navy bombing range for over 50 years. World War II through 1996. Even after cleanup, it's still littered with unexploded ordnance buried in brush. Consequently, No Man's Land is permanently closed to humans and has become an accidental wildlife paradise. Birds and seals thrive with zero disturbance. The Navy transferred it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but essentially said, leave it alone, there might be bombs. So it's now a booby-trapped nature reserve where the most effective conservation strategy is leftover military explosives. Fact 30, Cape Cod's Great White Comeback. Cape Cod isn't just about lighthouses and lobster rolls. It's now one of the top great white shark hotspots on Earth. Since the mid-2010s, scientists have identified over 700 individual sharks patrolling these waters, drawn by a massive booming gray seals, about 50,000 of them. That's an all-you-can-eat buffet for 15-foot predators. Spotter planes regularly catch dozens of fins slicing through the outer Cape surf, and beaches now close for sightings every summer. A few decades ago, seeing a great white here was unheard of. Today, Cape Cod rivals South Africa. The seals came back, the sharks followed, and Jaws became real. Fact 29, highest point in southern New England. Mount Greylock, at 3,489 feet, claims bragging rights as southern New England's highest peak, dominating anything in Connecticut, Rhode Island, or southeastern New York. Its summit has a 93-foot Veterans War Memorial Tower, and on clear days you can see roughly 90 miles in all directions, spanning 5 states: Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Vermont, and New Hampshire. The Appalachian Trail crosses right over the top. While Greylock isn't massive by Western standards, it's got some commanding views and serious prominence. Fact 28, Moby Dick's mountain inspiration. From his study in Pittsfield, Herman Melville looked out his window and saw Mount Greylock glowing white under the snow and imagined a whale. That vision became Moby Dick. The mountain's rounded, ghostly shape reminded him of a giant breaching the land. Melville later dedicated one of his books to the majesty of Greylock, calling it his inland sea. It's eerie to think one of the greatest stories ever written about the ocean was inspired by a mountain. Fact 27, the first woman to name a dinosaur. How many states can claim their dino was discovered and named by a pioneering woman geologist over a century ago? Just one. Massachusetts' official state dinosaur, Pothole holyokensis, represents a pioneering achievement in paleontology. In 1910, Mount Holyoke College professor Mignon Talbot discovered the only known fossils of this small Triassic theropod near Mount Holyoke. When she described and named it in 1911, Talbot became the first woman ever to discover and name a non-avian dinosaur, a groundbreaking accomplishment in male-dominated science. The little swift-footed lizard measured only 3 to 6 feet long. Tragically, the original fossil burned in 1917, but casts and Talbot's documentation preserved its legacy. In 2021, Massachusetts designated Pothole as state dinosaur. Fact 26, America's first public beach. Before 1896, beaches were for the rich, until Massachusetts decided they shouldn't be. That year, Revere Beach opened just north of Boston as the first public beach in the United States. On day one, 45,000 people showed up to swim, dance, and watch the sunset for free. It became known as the Coney Island of New England, filled with rides, boardwalks, and laughter echoing across the sand. The amusement era eventually faded, but the idea didn't. Today, every public beach in America owes a little credit to Revere, the one that started it all. Fact 25, the lake with history in its depths. Massachusetts doesn't have the Great Lakes, but it does have one pretty great pond. Assawampset Pond near Lakeville in Middleborough sprawls over 2,500 acres, making it the largest natural lake in the entire state. That name means place of the white stones in Wampanoag, and its calm surface hides centuries of history. This is where Wampanoag leader Metacom, known as King Philip, was killed in 1676, marking the end of King Philip's War. Today, it's still sacred ground, still pristine, and still alive with native fish like alewives and brook trout. It's not just the biggest lake, it's a living link between nature, history, and culture. Fact 24, Plymouth Rock isn't so big. Let's be honest, Plymouth Rock is way smaller than you think. The legendary stone where the Pilgrims supposedly landed in 1620 has been chipped, cracked, and dragged around so many times that it's maybe a third of its original size. Souvenir hunters literally took chunks of it home. The rock we see today, sitting under a granite portico, weighs around 10 tons, engraved with 1620. But that's the thing, it doesn't need size to be iconic. Plymouth Rock isn't impressive because it's big, it's impressive because it still matters. Fact 23, Boston's islands are drowned hills. The Boston Harbor Islands look like a bunch of random hills sticking out of the ocean, and that's exactly what they are. These 34 islands aren't volcanic or coral, they're drowned drumlins, the eroded remains of glacier-sculpted hills that flooded when sea levels rose after the Ice Age. From above, they look like half-sunken eggs scattered across the bay. It's one of only 3 places on Earth with this kind of submerged hill environment. The others are in Ireland and, debatably, nowhere else. So yeah, next time you're sailing through Boston Harbor, you're literally weaving through ghosts of glaciers. Fact 22. Massachusetts regrew its forests. Here's a twist. Massachusetts is more forested now than it was in the 1800s. 2 centuries ago, farmers and logging stripped the state bare. But when agriculture collapsed and people moved west, the trees took their land back. Abandoned pastures turned into dense woods, and stone walls in the forest still trace those old farm boundaries. Today, over 60% of the state is forest again, approximately 3 million acres, one of the highest rates in America. It's a rare comeback story where nature actually got the last word. Fact 21. Great ponds belong to everyone. Massachusetts has a 400-year-old rule that sounds almost too good to be true. If a natural pond is over 10 acres, it belongs to everyone. These great ponds, more than 1,000 across the state, are open for swimming, boating, and fishing, no matter who owns the land around them. The law dates back to the 1640s, and it's still enforced today. So if you ever see a little trail cutting through someone's property to a big lake, that's not trespassing. That's democracy on water. Fact 20. A prehistoric sunken forest. Just off Cape Cod, storms sometimes uncover something straight out of prehistory, an entire forest buried under the waves. When powerful winter tides strip away the sand, they reveal petrified stumps of oak and pine that once stood miles inland, back when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower. These trees are approximately 4,000 years old, preserved in place since the end of the Ice Age. For a few days after a storm, you can literally walk among the ghosts of an ancient woodland before the sand swallows it again. Fact 19. The Great Heath Hen Extinction. Once upon a time, the heath hen filled New England's fields with its booming calls. By the late 1800s, every single one was gone, except on Martha's Vineyard. There, the last male, nicknamed Booming Ben, hung out alone each spring until he died in 1932. His extinction became one of America's first major wildlife tragedies. But here's the twist. Scientists are now exploring de-extinction techniques to bring the heath hen back, using preserved DNA. The species that disappeared nearly a century ago might one day walk those same island forests again. Fact 18. America's first lighthouse still staffed by hand. Boston Light isn't just the oldest lighthouse in America, it's also the last one with a real human keeper. Built and lit in 1716 on Little Brewster Island, it was destroyed during the Revolution, rebuilt twice, and has been shining ever since. Most lighthouses went fully automated decades ago, but Congress made an exception here. By law, Boston Light must remain manned, a living relic of maritime tradition. Visit on a tour and you might just meet the keeper herself, guiding ships the old-fashioned way, 3 centuries later. Fact 17. Dogtown's philosophical boulders. Hidden deep in Cape Anne's woods is a ghost town called Dogtown, and its boulders have something to say. Abandoned in the 1800s, the area earned a reputation for witches, outcasts, and wild dogs. Then, in the 1930s, a local philanthropist decided to carve motivational messages into the massive glacial rocks scattered through the forest. Now, while hiking, you'll stumble on stones that literally shout advice. Courage, get a job, help mother. It's part graveyard, part self-help seminar, and one of the strangest hikes in New England. Fact 16. The Glacial Pothole Wonderland. In the town of Shelburne Falls, the Deerfield River hides a surreal collection of 50 smooth circular craters carved into solid granite, known as the Glacial Potholes. The largest is nearly 40 feet across, possibly the biggest on Earth. Thousands of years ago, raging meltwater spun trapped stones like drill bits, boring perfect cylinders straight into the rock. Today, when the river runs low, the site looks like an alien sculpture garden, and locals even swim in the smaller ones. Proof that glaciers weren't just destructive, they were also incredible artists. Fact 15. The winter the ocean froze. In February 1934, Massachusetts turned into a polar fantasy movie. Temperatures plunged so low that Buzzards Bay and Nantucket Sound froze solid, salt water and all. People literally walked from Woods Hole to Martha's Vineyard on ice, and Edgartown residents strolled across their harbor to Chappaquiddick like it was a sidewalk. Steamships were trapped in pack ice. Boston hit negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit, and locals still call it the winter the sea forgot it was an ocean. Other years have come close, 1918 and 1977, but 1934 remains legendary. The year Cape Cod Bay turned into a skating rink. Fact 14, where America's Industrial Revolution really began. Before Detroit or Pittsburgh were industrial icons, there was Lowell. In the 1820s, engineers harnessed the Merrimack River with a network of canals and built America's first planned factory city. Thousands of looms clattered in brick mills ran by Lowell mill girls, young women who formed the nation's first female labor union. The city's canals still run today as part of Lowell National Historic Park, where you can boat through the birthplace of American industry. It was a mix of Yankee engineering and raw grit that launched an economic revolution. Fact 13, Boston, the city that built itself. Half of Boston should technically be underwater. In the 1800s, engineers flattened the city's hills and dumped them into the harbor to create new land. Entire neighborhoods like Back Bay were built on fill poured into tidal flats. And East Boston was once 5 separate islands before they were connected to form the land under Logan Airport. Historians estimate Boston's footprint grew by about 50% through these projects. They literally dismantled Mount Vernon Hill and used it as construction materials. So when you walk the streets of Boston, you're walking on a man-made miracle, a city that recycled itself. Fact 12, Mystic Valley volcanoes. Massachusetts doesn't do active volcanoes, but it certainly did them in the past. Throughout the state, particularly in the Middlesex Falls and Pioneer Valley, geologists keep finding evidence of ancient volcanic activity. Those basalt trap rock ridges in the Connecticut River Valley, Jurassic lava flows from about 200 million years ago, when tectonic forces were ripping Africa and North America apart. Massachusetts had lava plains back then, possibly even small volcanoes. That Roxbury conglomerate, Puddingstone, we mentioned earlier, formed in basins next to active volcanoes. Underground, ancient volcanic intrusions still lurk in the bedrock. So while it isn't a concern today, Massachusetts had a fiery past. Fact 11, county confusion, government's gone. Quick quiz, what county is Boston in? If you answered Suffolk County, you're technically correct, but functionally wrong. Massachusetts has 14 counties on paper, but more than half lack actual county governments. 8 counties, including Middlesex and Essex, exist purely as map boundaries with no commissioners, no councils, no real governance. Massachusetts began eliminating county governments in the late 1990s to save money, a pretty unusual move in America. The state took over most county functions except jails and courts. This baffles visitors from states where county government means something. In Massachusetts, governance happens at town or city and state levels. Counties? They're mostly just convenient ways to describe where you live, not actual political entities. Fact 10, Bashbish, the twin waterfall at the corner of 3 states. Tucked in the far western corner of Massachusetts, right where the state meets New York and Connecticut, Bashbish Falls is the kind of place that feels untouched. The brook splits into 2 narrow streams that drop side by side before joining again and falling nearly 80 feet into a deep pool below. It's the highest waterfall in Massachusetts and one of the most photographed spots in the Berkshires. The sound of water against rock echoes through the gorge, and when the light catches the mist just right, faint rainbows hang above the pool. A short trail downstream leads to the tri-state marker, meaning you can stand in 3 states after visiting one of the most striking natural landmarks in New England. Fact 9, the rivers that turn to stone. Ever wonder what happens when glaciers decide to do a little interior design? The answer? Eskers. Long, snaking ridges of sand and gravel that trace the paths of rivers which once flowed under the ice. When the glaciers melted 12,000 years ago, those subglacial rivers hardened into these winding natural causeways. You can still hike along them today at places like Ipswich River Sanctuary or Stony Brook. They rise 30 to 40 feet above flat ground, like nature's version of an ancient highway. The wild part? Some modern roads follow the same curves. Humans literally paving over prehistoric plumbing. Fact 8, all 14 counties in one view. Mount Wachusett might not scrape the sky at 2,006 feet, but it delivers one heck of a panorama. On a crystal clear day, locals swear you can see all 14 Massachusetts counties, from the Berkshires to the faint shimmer of Cape Cod. Whether or not that's technically true, the summit view is wild. Boston's skyline glints on the horizon 50 miles away, and you can practically play Spot the County with binoculars. It's one of those spots where the entire state feels like it's laid out at your feet. Fact 7. The border that zigzags on purpose. Look closely at the Massachusetts-Connecticut border and you'll spot a random little bump, the Southwick Jog. This 2.5-mile zigzag exists thanks to 160 years of colonial surveyor chaos. In 1642, terrified surveyors avoided the woods and charted the line from a boat, creating an accidental dip southward. After centuries of arguments, both colonies gave up and split the mistake in half. Today, part of Southwick, Massachusetts pokes into Connecticut like a geographical typo no one wanted to erase. Drive through it and your GPS will think you're drunk. Fact 6. The oldest public park in America. Before there was a United States, there was Boston Common. Founded in 1634, it's the oldest public park in America. A patch of green that's seen everything from cattle grazing to British troops camping to modern-day protests. The Puritans set it aside for the use of all, making it the first publicly owned city park in the New World. Nearly 400 years later, skyscrapers surround it, but the Common still beats at the center of Boston like a living time capsule. Proof that even the country's oldest park hasn't lost its edge. Fact 5. The Bridge of Flowers. When the trolley line through Shelburne Falls shut down in 1929, locals didn't tear down its bridge. The 400-foot concrete span over the Deerfield River became a public garden, covered edge to edge in blossoms. Today, the Bridge of Flowers blooms with hundreds of plant species each spring and summer, from lilies and dahlias to creeping vines and roses, all maintained by volunteers. It's part of a rare pairing in Shelburne Falls, the town's famous glacial potholes carved by nature, and this bridge sculpted by people. A century later, what was once industrial infrastructure now stands as one of Massachusetts' most beautiful examples of reuse. A river crossing turned living artwork. Fact 4. Springfield, city of firsts on the river. Springfield occupies prime real estate on the Connecticut River's eastern bank, and that location helped make it a city of innovations and earned it the nickname City of Firsts. It's the largest city on the Connecticut River and the original Springfield. How so? Well, it was established in 1636, and at least 30 other US Springfields came later, as well as a fictional version in The Simpsons. Even more impressive, it hosted the Springfield Armory from 1777, where the concept of interchangeable gun parts was standardized, a sheer breakthrough in manufacturing. Also, the first American gasoline-powered car got built in a Springfield garage in 1893. But wait, there's more. Basketball was invented here in 1891 when Dr. James Naismith needed an indoor winter sport. Why here? Springfield sits at the crossroads of river, road, and rail routes. The Connecticut River Valley's flat terrain made transportation easy and innovation flow freely. Fact 3. Cambridge's mysterious Gravity Hill. Cambridge has an optical illusion that messes with drivers' heads. Near Porter Square, along Elm Street by the Somerville line, there's a slope rumored to be a gravity hill where cars in neutral appear to roll uphill. Physics isn't actually breaking down here. The surrounding terrain and buildings create a visual trick that makes downhill look like uphill. Your brain misreads the angles, and suddenly your car seems to be defying gravity. Many states have similar spots. This is Massachusetts' most famous example. While not scientifically wild, just perceptual deception, it's fun local folklore that still confuses people. Fact 2. North America's only white marble bridge. What do you get when glacial meltwater spends 13,000 years carving through 550 million year old bedrock? Natural Bridge State Park in North Adams has the answer. North America's only naturally formed white marble arch. Hudson Brook carved this unique bridge as glaciers melted, creating a span over a 60-foot gorge. The park also features the continent's only man-made white marble dam, built in the early 1800s to power quarry mills. From 1810 to 1947, this site operated as a commercial marble quarry before becoming a state park in 1985. Fact 1. Lake Chargogagagma Chugagachwab Bunagag Mugwa. Yeah, that's real. We end with the inevitable, that lake with the ridiculously long name. Lake, well, that you see on your screen in Webster contains 45 letters, making it America's longest place name. It's so absurdly long that town signs include pronunciation guides. Good luck anyway. The popular translation, I fish on my side, you fish on yours, and nobody fishes in the middle. It's actually a joke invented in 1921, but it stuck. The real Nipmuc meaning is closer to fishing place at the boundaries, or lake divided by islands. Either way, this lake's name generates pride and endless amusement. But of course, many don't refer to it by its 45 letters, they simply call it Webster Lake, and can you blame them? What about 50 Washington facts that sound fake, but are real?